Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast of your host, Charles Kiriakou. Today, I'm joined by Brad Placks. I was going to do an introduction as to what Brad does, but Brad does an awful lot, and he's been in the recruitment sector for 30 years. And honestly, I think anybody at any stage of their recruitment career is going to get an absolute shed ton of value. So, Brad, firstly, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. And like I just said, why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are, what you do for people that may not know?
Hey, no worries. Good to be on with you, Charles. So I've been in the industry for 30 years. Currently, for the last 5, 6 years, been working as an advisor, non-exec to a portfolio of recruitment companies and HR tech businesses. And recently also launched a business called Mint 66, which is an HR tech business centered around employee feedback and employee engagement.
Love it. Awesome. So we've got a quite a few different topics we're going to talk about today. And when Brad and I first sat down, not the first time we ever met, but the last time we sat down to talk about the podcast, one of the first topics we were going to speak about was planning. And just before we started recording today, I mentioned to Brad that before I got into L&D, planning was quite possibly my least impressive skill set. I never really done day plans. I was just I was all over the place, to be honest with you. Whether that's just ADHD or not, I don't know, but I was just all over the place. So I think I'm going to learn an awful lot from this episode. But let's just start with that, Brad, because you really went into a lot of detail when we first spoke about the podcast, and you said you've got some analogies on planning and kind of why you think it's so important. But just talk us through that then.
Okay, so let's start with the analogy. If you're building a house, you don't start with the walls, the ceiling, and the roof. You start with the foundations. From a recruitment viewpoint, from your daily activity, the foundation of a good day starts with your plan. And it's been a long time since I've been on the desk, but it was drilled into me day one when I first walked into the recruitment business I worked for, that to get the most out of your day, you need to be structured, you need to be disciplined, and you need to know what you're doing. And I look around people I work with and generally in the market, and it baffles me that people come into work and they're not quite sure what they're going to attack first.
Mm.
And the problem is, without effective planning, the day beats you, the day starts controlling you. And we work in a fairly reactive world. We never know when a client's going to call us. We never know when a candidate's going to call us. And if we're reacting to things all the time, you never quite get the most from your day. You need to be proactive in a reactive world. And then you can make a decision if this new thing that's just come in is more important than what you've currently got planned. And if it is, you stop, you pivot, you deal with it, and then you go back to your plan. The problem is, if you haven't got a plan, you've got nothing to go back to. Then the day starts running away and controls you. So for me, I think it's crucial. I think it's crucial for success. And the best recruiters, the ones that are structured, disciplined, and have a well thought out day. And I always look at it quite simply. My definition of a pretty decent plan is I should be able to go up to anyone's desk and do their day's work.
Mm.
And if I can't do that, then I question how effective their plan is. And from experience, I think people mistake the things to do list with a plan. Yeah. Because what I want to see is it's relevant to each consultant and the way a business runs. But you work in an environment where you've got certain sprints in for the day, whether it's a BD sprint, whether it's a talent pooling sprint, whatever it may well be. You've got that time associated, but who are you going to call within that time? Yeah. The more you plan, the more you'll get done. So for me, you want to plan ideally the night before versus first thing in the morning, because you want to get your thinking pre-done. So during the day, you're focused on the doing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people think, right, okay, it's BD time. Who are we going to call? And they think about it and try to work out what their hit list, for want of a better word, is. Before you know it, you've creeped into half the time you allocated for BD. So for me, it's crucial. I think success starts by being disciplined, by being consistent in a structured day plan. facilitates that.
Mm. I want to ask you a couple of questions around that. But when I was the L&D manager, one of the top performing directors said that, and by the way, this guy was similar to me in the respect that he was just all over the place. Like it was just there, here, there, and everywhere. However, he was very disciplined and regimented with his day plan, which was really, really interesting. And a lot of recruiters said something that I've heard in my career for years. Charles, how can I do a day plan when my day just gets disrupted by a candidate not turning up for an interview or a client calling in with a job? And then all of a sudden, my BD sprint, when a client's just called me for a job, like it's just all over the place. And I was kind of like that. And I've got my own opinion of that and what you just said there about, doing your day plan so the day doesn't plan you or whatever it was that you just said. But how do you make that effective plan? Because you mentioned there about sprints, you mentioned there about the to-do list. I created, when I was the L&D manager, a double-sided day plan, and I laminated it and gave people like the chalk pen so you could just rub it off at the end of each day, and you blue tacked people's desk. So I'd walk over to them and be like, right, what's your day plan? You turn it over and then you got your to-do list. You got both, right? So how do you make that day plan actually effective and stick to it?
So for me, again, it was drummed into me early in my career. You have to plan as if nothing is going to come in and disturb you. If you don't get a call, if a client doesn't call you back, if a candidate doesn't call you back, what are you doing for the 9, 10, 11 hours you're in the office for, or you're working at home, whatever your cadence is? And then when something does come in, you're simply looking at what you're doing and asking yourself, is it urgent? Is it important? Is it possibly going to take me to success quicker than what I've currently got planned? And you can make a judgment call as to whether you deal with it now or you take a call for 30 seconds and say, hey, I'm just going into a meeting. Can I come back to you tomorrow or Thursday? And you start forward planning and you book in whatever it is that's coming in, because not everything that comes in is urgent, is important. It doesn't all have to be dealt with then and there. And that's where the discipline comes in. One of the biggest challenges we have in recruitment is time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. For those that are really hungry for success, they really value their time. Mm. So you can't be at the mercy of everyone all the time. The power of no is really important. Yeah.
It's a hard skill to learn, though, isn't it? Saying no.
Oh, it's incredibly tough. But the most important thing is, how do you manage your time to make your day as effective as possible? And if you keep being disturbed on dealing with low impact tasks, you're never going to complete the high value tasks. And that's where the money is. So as a consequence, if you've got a structure and then you look at what's coming in and decide whether it's more urgent, more important than what you're currently doing, stopping, pausing, dealing with it is absolutely fine. There's so many times during the day where that is absolutely necessary. But what are you going back to? And if you don't have that plan, then you're constantly reacting to things all day long, every day. And as I mentioned earlier on, the day starts controlling you. You have to really value your time. And the more control you're in, the more effective you will be and the more successful you will be, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I can definitely remember multiple times in my career where, I've set myself a sprint to source for a role. And as someone that used to have the attention span of a plank of wood, it was very difficult to go and do LinkedIn projects, right? But, a candidate would call in that's completely irrelevant to the search that I'm doing. And I would just take the call and just, have a chat with them. And then maybe I spec them out, etc. And then I've gone back and I'm like, oh, well, that 2 hour sprint that I've scheduled in is kind of gone now because I've just been doing this other thing and it kind of disrupted my whole day. But I work with a lot of recruiters now that are in a similar situation. And the way I rectified that is very similar to what you've just said there. If a candidate calls in and it's not to do with the search I'm doing right now, I still take the call because that's courtesy and it's professionalism, and say, look, I'm right in the middle of something, but I wanted to take your call because I have been trying to reach out to you for some time. Got some really exciting things to speak to you about. I've got some time at this time and this time. What works for you? Oh, I can speak at 4 p.m. Your BD sprint finishes at 4 p.m., right? You do 2 till 4, whatever it is. Cool. I'll give you a call at 4 p.m. I'll send you an invite now. Da, 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 da. Back to your BD sprint. And you've got a list of people to call. Every single person you're calling, you know why you're calling them. You've got other points of contact. And that way, what you're saying there, I think a lot of people, especially the people I work with that struggle with planning and struggle with staying disciplined, we're not saying ignore the candidates that are coming in, or if a client's messaged you back from an email saying, yeah, candidate looks good, let's jump on a call. You can call that person, but just get back to what you're doing on your day plan. So I think what you said there, Brad, makes so much sense.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other trick for me is when you do your plan. Yeah. And look, different strokes for different folks. For me, what always worked was planning the last thing before I left the office, or you shut your laptop when you're working at home. It's something quite powerful knowing that you've reflected on your day, you've thought about what you're going to do tomorrow. The only difference between finishing your plan in the evening and starting your day in the morning is any emails that have come in overnight. So that could be the first task of your day.
Yeah.
Look at emails that have come in from overnight. And the way you do it is you put in a planning sprint at the end of the day. You plan to plan.
Yeah.
And if you've got half an hour, because reflection is also a really important skill set. You need to look at your day. You need to work out, have you been able to achieve what you set out to achieve? What needs to be carried forward to today, from today to tomorrow? And if you give yourself the time to stop, think, reflect, consider what you need to do tomorrow, make sure you've accounted for all your time, and therefore when you start at 8 o'clock or 8:30 or whatever it is, time you start, you're coming in and you're hitting the ground running.
Yeah.
And for me, if you start with a plan in the morning, more often than not, it's not the first thing you do. The first thing you do is you look at emails, and then you're in the day. Yeah. And before you know it, day is controlling you. So yeah, that for me is a relatively simple habit to get into. But with all habits, especially in the world of recruitment, if you want to be successful, you need to be consistently consistent. Yeah. And in order to do that, it takes discipline, and it takes a little bit of self-awareness and not allowing yourself to make excuses.
I mean, if we're talking about incremental improvements, right, and getting 1% better, if you're spending your first half an hour going through email, say, for example, I used to get in the office at 8:30, right? You spend your first half an hour going through your LinkedIn messages, notifications, you're replying to comments, you're going through your emails and all the rest of it. And then you're spending another half an hour like, right, what jobs am I going to work? Let's go through my CRM. Which job is hot? Okay, cool. I've got a few CVs there. By the time it's like 9:30, you've just wasted a whole hour. And then you're like, actually, do you know what? I'll get myself a coffee. I'll go to the kitchen. I'll go and do this, that, and the other. So if we're talking about getting 1% better, the people that are high performing, like you said, they're not wasting their morning thinking. They're doing that once they've finished their day. And it goes back to what you said, Brad. It's discipline. It is discipline. If you really want to be better, if you want to be a high performer, that time in the morning that you spend trying to plan your day, you should be already knowing what you're going to do. And half an hour to go through emails, LinkedIn notifications and stuff like that, it's fine. And then boom, you're straight in.
100%. And also you talk about the high performers. High performers aren't high performers by accident. Yeah, that's the key. Yeah, you might get a lucky recruiter here and there. In the main, they work hard, they're disciplined, they're focused, and they're really good at what they do. But it starts with them being structured and disciplined.
Yeah. And do you know what? It's like I said at the start of the podcast, that's one thing that I guess kind of like upset me a little bit when I was in perm recruitment. It's my first proper job in the city in recruitment. And I was really, really successful there. But the two top billers were so disciplined and so focused. Like there was this one guy called Akbar. I want to get him on the podcast. He's phenomenal. I used to like poke him on the shoulder going, Akbar, what are we doing for lunch? And he just wouldn't react because he was just so in the zone. And the director would always say to me, like, you need to be more like Akbar. He's so focused. And obviously I was not diagnosed with ADHD at that point, right? I wasn't medicated or anything. I just struggled so much with focus. I really, really struggled. We didn't work from home at the time. We all had like desktop computers and stuff. But but I was disciplined. I used to go to the gym, I trained martial arts, all the rest of it. So my thing wasn't necessarily back then, it changed obviously, but back then it wasn't necessarily like a regimented day plan. For me, it was like a bit of an idea of what jobs I needed to source and a list of people to go through. And I was an animal when it came to BD. I had like a list of like 300 contacts within my ICP, and I was better than anyone in that office because that's the thing that I was unbelievable at. And then eventually I hired someone in my team who was phenomenal at sourcing. He was like one of the best people I ever found sourcing. And together we done like 450 plus K together because he was basically just filling my jobs. But I really, really struggled with focus. And I sometimes have to kind of bite my lip because I deal with a lot of recruiters that are, you can just tell. I mean, I've had ADHD my whole life. I can just tell they're just all over the place. They're in a coaching meeting, eyes are going everywhere, all the rest of it. And it's like, it's really hard sometimes to say you've got to focus to someone that naturally, whether it's a chemical thing or not, they just, for whatever reason, really, really struggle with focus. So I'm just wondering if, I mean, recruitment's full of them. I'm wondering if you deal with any business owners or have you dealt with recruiters that have struggled with that focus, knowing it is such an important skill for the job, and kind of what your advice would be for those people.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a really valid point, and there's a lot of people out there with ADHD and undiagnosed ADHD as well. So for me, everyone works in a slightly different way. You've got to be able to put things in place that are going to enable you to be as productive as you can possibly be. So I go back to the planning sprint the day before.
Mm-hmm.
If you can actually just take yourself away from your desk, stop, think, work out what you need to do. If you have issues keeping focus, at least with a plan, you've got something to go back to. Without it, you're all over the place. And what we need to try to help people do is, it's so cliche, you want to work smarter, not harder. And recruitment, there's a lot of talk out there about recruitment. It's a really hard job at the moment. I don't really subscribe to that. I think you have to work hard at it.
Yeah.
But actually, the job itself is
it's not rocket science.
It's complicated. There's loads of different components. There's loads of challenges. There's more tech coming in, and our clients have got access to the same tech that we have in recruitment. There's more competition out there. But yeah, it's not rocket sciences. We're not putting humans on Mars. Yeah. So for me, it's about working hard to get the most out of your day. And if you decide career in recruitment is for you, the opportunity to earn is immense. Absolutely immense. And if you're going to put in 10, 11-hour shift, you may as well try and work out how to get the most of that. Because there are easier ways to spend your day if you're not that bothered by the money, if you're not that bothered by career progression. So it is important to be able to recognize, right, if I'm at work, how can I maximize my time? And I think just looking in the mirror and realizing the value of your time is really, really important. You're not getting it back, both in your personal life and your professional life. So you may as well max out how you use your time. And if you do struggle with focus and the discipline to remain focused, at least with a day plan, even if you don't pick everything off on your plan, you've always got something to fall back to.
Yeah.
And you click into gear and think, right, where am I up to? Without that, it's that constant struggle of what do I do next? What do I do next? And I go back to my earlier point. You want to be thinking about the calls and the emails that you're doing, because the content and the delivery and the way you communicate and build rapport is obviously critical to developing these relationships. But you don't want to be thinking about what you're going to be doing. You want to have that pre-thought done
Mm.
so that you can focus on the doing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started a long time ago, when I started in recruitment, I had a flowing ponytail, so that's how long ago it was.
I need to see a picture of
You,
that.
you really don't. I, I recognised that I really wanted to be successful.
Mm.
For me, there was a few basic principles. Number one, I'm going to work harder and longer than anyone else that I'm sitting with at the moment, because that's
Mm-hmm.
going to give me the best chance of being really good.
Yep.
And secondly, planning and the value of my time clicked really early.
Mm.
And you can't be all things to all people. There'll be certain responsibilities as a recruiter that you will have set by your leaders. It's perfectly acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Implement that into the structure of your day.
Mm.
Yeah. And it doesn't need to be more complicated than that.
Mm.
It really doesn't. It just takes the awareness and the discipline to actually say, right, before I go home, before I shut my laptop, I need to make sure that I've got myself organized for tomorrow.
Mm.
And I still do it religiously every day
Mm.
without fail. Yeah. Some days I might have 5 or 6 things to do. Some days I might have 25,
Mm.
26 things to do. But once I work out my things to do list, I then attach time to where this goes
Mm.
so the day has structure and discipline.
Yeah, I
You
love that.
just get more done.
Mm. Honestly, there's so much good advice that you put in there, and I think the amount of recruitment businesses I've worked with in the last year and the amount of people, even people, Brad, that don't have ADHD, we live in a generation now where there is so much dopamine coming into your face from Instagram to TikTok and even LinkedIn. Like people's attention spans have got ruined, right? So a lot of people are struggling with focus. So what you've said there about the day plan and having something to reflect back to and stuff, I think is really beneficial for anyone, whether they have ADHD or not. And it really, really helped me as a recruiter. And this is before I started taking medication. I would religiously do my day plan with my team every evening. So I would eliminate, like we spoke about, we would eliminate thinking time first thing in the morning, and the day was sort of planned. Things that came in that would distract me, and again, I'm still even on medication. I still can get distracted, albeit I've grown, I've matured, and I'm obviously on ADHD medication now. But I think there's a lot of really, really good advice that you've given there for people. And I think the biggest takeaways is just do your sprints, plan, have some time to reflect. And I also think that if you are somebody that struggles with focus, with that type of stuff, or even with discipline, it's a bit of a silly term, but an accountability buddy, accountability partner, right?
I
Whether it's
love
your
that.
whether it's your manager or I used to have like close mates in other teams, and I would say like, Brad, I'm going to do a sprint and I'm going to go and do this really, really niche search. There's only like 50 people on LinkedIn, and I'm going to individually personalize each message. Make sure if I start speaking about football or UFC, can you just tell me to shut the fuck up, please? And I would get people. My manager Simon was amazing at this, and sometimes I'd grind my teeth and go, "Oh, fuck's sake, Simon, man." But I would ask him because I knew how fucking distractible I was to others and to myself. And the minute I'd get up and go, does anyone want a coffee? Charles, send out 2 more emails. Okay, cool. I'll do the 2 more emails. I get up, make a coffee. Anyone see the football on the weekend? Charles, you've got 15 minutes left of your sprint, mate. How many more have you got to go? 5. Do them. All right, cool. And that for me really, really helps. And it's just another thing, isn't it? It's just communication. And if you struggle with those things, open up about it and have other people try and give you a helping hand as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great shout. Just another spin on it though. The best person to hold you to account is yourself.
But if you
And
struggle, I'll just say one thing. If you struggle with it initially, especially if you were, because I was like 23, right?
yeah.
Self-awareness and stuff when you're in your early 20s compared to me, I'm 30 now. I'm turning 31 in a couple of months. Way more like discipline, way more self-aware. I think for people that are younger that struggle with that, you're 100% right. But I think to help you get into a habit, like if you don't know how to lift weights, you want to go and speak to someone that's a professional to teach you how to do that, and then you can do it yourself. Yeah.
100%. One of the things I used to do, and I've told a few people to do it over the years, is once you do your plan at the end of the day, just give yourself, as you're finishing up, a 30-second accountability check and give yourself a grade out of 10.
Mm.
Yeah. how good was I today? So if you've turned up for work, you're going to give yourself a 2 as a minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's unlikely you're going to get to a 10 unless you build £1,000,000 that day.
Yeah.
Right. So you decide what's on the scale, but you kept to your plan, you achieved your targets, you're well planned for tomorrow. Everything that you wanted to achieve was achieved and some. You give yourself an 8.5 or a 9. You know, even if you've got a plan, sometimes you just have a poor day.
Yeah.
To your point around focus, it hasn't gone to plan, nothing's come off, I haven't hit my objectives. I'm going to give myself a 4. Have a little bit of self-talk. Right. Today I was a 4. Tomorrow, when I walk in that office, I'm not leaving until I'm a minimum of a 7.
Yeah.
And I always found that quite motivational. And you just find your own way to be able to give yourself that little bit of accountability, that little bit of a kick. But I also love what you said about, what was it, an accountability buddy?
Yeah, accountability buddy.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna nick that. That's
Go
really
for
good.
it.
Really good.
There's something else as well that you're saying there, and it kind of goes on to what we spoke about accountability. I'll never forget my first 3 months working at Projectus. My boss, Tim, walked over to my desk, tapped me on the shoulder, and was like, "You all right, Charles? How was your day?" And I went, "Yeah, Tim, yeah, it was really, really good. Spoke to some really good candidates. Yeah, it was a really good day." And he went, "Cool. What have you achieved today?" And I looked at him and I just froze. I was like, "Fuck, what? What have I actually achieved? I've spoken to candidates. I've got no subs. BD calls I've had. I haven't really. Oh, fuck." And I just looked at him. And he went, "Nothing." And I went, and then he just walked away. And I was like, "Oh fuck! Oh shit!" He's just completely called me out. And I was like, "Right, there's 2 ways I can approach this. I can either interpret it like, oh, he's being an asshole or whatever, or I could look at it and go, actually, I've worked really hard, but I haven't actually worked smart or strategically with my day. I've just fucking spoken like what we spoke about at the start about just speaking to any candidate and then, oh, I had 4 hours phone time today. But any of those candidates any good? Did you really need to speak to that candidate for 45 minutes? Or did you just spend the first 20 minutes speaking about football? Like, what were you doing? So that was really, really good. But I want to quickly switch gears because there's 2 things that you just spoke about. There was one about working really, really hard. And I think a lot of people, we speak about work-life balance. And I've dealt with recruiters that are like, yeah, Charles, I want to buy a Porsche and I want to move out my parents' house, but I need to leave at 5 because work-life balance. And you're like, right, okay. And there was another thing you mentioned a minute ago about the ability to build rapport with people, to build relationships. It's something I'm so, so passionate about. So we'll touch on that in a second. But talk me through your opinions and thoughts on this work, because I know you have a different interpretation on work-life balance, right? So talk me through that.
Yeah, I really don't like that phrase, work-life balance. I 100% believe in balance.
Mm.
The reason why I don't like work-life balance is because, for me, world's changing, people's attitudes are changing. Balance, when people start thinking about work-life balance, is a generalization more than anything else. You're either working or you're not working. And I need to focus on my gym activity. I need to focus on that work-life balance. I've got to leave the office bang on time because I have my life. I don't subscribe to it. We only have one life. Yeah. And everything needs to flow. So for me, it's about work-life integration. When I'm at work, a personal call comes in, I'm going to take it. When I'm at home and a work call comes in, I'm going to take it. So it's about, how do you make the thing flow? If you want to be successful, if you want to give yourself the opportunity to have more choices by earning more money, you have to go over and above what the average person is prepared to do. Yeah, I'm not suggesting we build an environment full of workaholics. If you love work and you love what you do, this whole concept of work-life balance and working out that you can't do something outside core hours because it's not the right thing to do. It's just rubbish, in my opinion. In my opinion. So for me, it's about, how do you get everything flowing? How do you integrate work and life, stop separating it, and recognizing that work is we do most of the time. in the hours that we are awake during the week.
Mm.
Yeah. Let's not separate it with our personal life. Why are you even making that separation? I've never really, truly understood that. Now, there's a difference between not liking that phrase, but believing in balance. You have to also listen to your mind, and you have to listen to your body. Burnout is a real thing. You have to look after yourself. You need to be healthy. You need to eat well. You need to exercise well. Not that I'm a shining example of either of those things, but that's a different story altogether. But it's really important that you have that self-awareness, because there will be some days where you can just keep going because you like it. You like the chase. You like the fact that you're doing a good job. You're creating opportunities for people and in particular yourself. There are other days where you've got to think, I need to slow down today, because you can't operate in seventh gear all the time. Sometimes you've got to drop it down into second and navigate where you go. Can you imagine Lewis Hamilton driving in top gear around the corners? He's going to crash. Yeah. 100%. So you've got to slow down to speed up. But I think we've created an image now where it's either work or it's personal, and I just don't subscribe to that. Yeah. So for me, that integration piece is a much better way to manage, in my opinion, manage your life, manage your career, to get the most out of it. The reality is, in the great scheme of things, we're not here for that long, are we?
No.
Yeah. So maximize what you've got. Yeah. And let's not fall into the trap of what some of these so-called gurus out there will preach with regards to work-life balance. If you want to be successful and you want to be able to earn well and you want to develop your career, recruitment is not and never has been a 9-to-5 job.
That's the first thing. That's the first thing I got told on my very first day of my recruitment career. This is not a 9-to-5.
When I was back on the desk, and we worked at a long time ago, I got in at 8, I left at 7, and the only reason I left at 7 is because I got kicked out. The guy that ran the company was just a complete weirdo and didn't let anyone in there without him. Used to get home by 7:45, and I then either planned or was on candidate calls to 8:30. Then I went to the pub and met my mates. Yeah. And rinsed and repeat every day. But my mates were in the pub from 6:30. I didn't miss out on anything. So 2 beers, 3 beers. Yeah. That's all I missed out on. And I had to discipline them. And really all what clicked for me was, there's an opportunity here to do really, really well. I was all right at it. Build well. I do more. I'm going to make more. I didn't make it more complex than that. So for me, work-life balance, if we listen to society and the way people preach about it, how beneficial is it really for your personal growth? How beneficial is it really to adhere to some of the pressures that you see on social media? What about changing the narrative and just recognizing that balance is super important, but work-life integration enables you to treat your life holistically as one and not separate your work life with your personal life. And in many cases, your personal life includes your work life, because you build relationships with clients, with candidates, and in particular with colleagues. Yeah. How many times do you go out with colleagues, whether whatever your interest may well be? Yeah. Many times they become friends. You don't need to separate the two to the extent that the modern world suggests that we do. People talk about you don't get any medals for working at weekends and this, that, and the other. Maybe, but if you want to, that's also cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. If you want to, as long as you're not being forced to do something you don't want to do, then maximize the opportunity you have in front of you, because you will be in the minority versus the majority, and therefore you will get further in life, in my opinion. And don't be afraid to buck the pressure that's out there. As I say, it's really important to double down on the fact I believe in balance. We need to know when to slow down to speed up. But it's the whole thought process and the connotation of work-life balance that in particular I don't think helps the younger generation who are coming into the world of work thinking, oh, okay, it's 5:30, it's time to now stop thinking about work and move into my life.
Yeah.
For me, it doesn't work. I think it's dangerous. I think we're giving the wrong message to the younger generation because the reality is it's a much more difficult way to create personal success if that's what your drive is.
The last thing that you just said there was basically what I was going to allude to. I think it very much boils down to whatever that person's motivations are. I've dealt with recruiters where I'm big on setting goals, creating healthy habits, and knowing where you want to be. What does your future self look like in an ideal world? And there are a lot of recruiters, and I've spoken to a lot of people about this on the podcast, that aren't necessarily. Do you know what? I think it was Bobby and Shane we spoke about. Yeah, a lot of the people in Generation Z, right? They feel like buying a house is so out of the realm of possibility, and my generation included as well. You can get anything at the click of a thumb, right? A click of a finger. Food, I can get food in the next 15 minutes. If I need to go to the airport, I can order an Uber. If I need an Ethernet cable for my modem, boom, that comes same day delivery. You can get everything immediately. So a lot of people think, well, doing 300k billing so that I can earn 100k or whatever it might be, that seems so far out of the possibility. Why am I going to work hard now? Because it's going to take so long for me to get there. So a lot of people, and obviously since the pandemic, loads of people, myself included, had time to really think about what's important in life, spending time with family and friends. Goes back to what you said about actually you're not really integrating it, you're kind of separating it. So I think it really boils down largely to what people's motivations are. And I say this to a lot of my clients as well, that if you've got a consultant that is profitable, they're not a dick, they're billing consistently, they're a good egg to have in the office, but they're not a high performer. They're doing 150k, 200k, and you think they could do better, but they're happy doing that. And they leave at 5:30, but they're always a hitting target, they're profitable. Sound. But my biggest problem, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, is when you've got someone, like I said earlier, oh, Charles, I want to buy a house, I want to get a Porsche, I want to buy a Rolex, but then they leave at 5:30. And you look at their day plan, you're like, well, you said you were going to source for that job, or you said you were going to do a lead chasing sprint, but you didn't do that. Oh, I'm going to go and see some mates after work, or, I'm really, really tired. That's where your kind of motivations don't correlate to what you're actually doing. And in turn, you're just being incongruent, right?
100% couldn't agree more. And but the reality is you're never going to build a recruitment business with a team of high performers. Yeah. You're going to have a small number of high performers. And that's cool. That works. Yeah. And to your point, if you've got a whole load of people billing 150, 200, that's amazing. Take that all day long. Yeah. But yeah, just don't kid yourself. And for me, it's the messages that the younger generation, and it's not only the younger generation, to be honest with you, but it's the messages that people accept via social media that the way of the world now is all about balance. And as I say, I don't know too many people, super successful people, that would subscribe to that attitude. So it's a question of realizing what it is you want, what you're prepared to do to get there. Recruitment's been tough the last 18 months. There's no doubt about it. We all know that. We live in hope that 2025 will continually get better than 23 and 24. My sense is it will be. We've got a wonderful budget happening imminently, so we'll have to see what happens on that. But regardless of those outside issues, the world has a habit of continually spinning, and opportunities are continually there to be had. So I think the more you put in, anything you like really, the more you put in, the more you get out.
Hmm.
Um, and if you want certain things for yourself, being willing to go above and beyond to get what you want is really the only way it's going to happen.
Mm. Do you
Unless
know
you've got
what?
a rich dad, no one's going to give it to you.
Do you know what? You've actually sparked a memory. Actually, it's quite a fond memory. You might laugh because it is. It's. I was like 10 or something like that at the time. There was a, this is gonna sound so lame to you. There was a new Call of Duty game coming out, right? Obviously, I'm like 10, 11 years old. It's like an 18, right? I couldn't go to the shop and buy it. And I used to like going to the midnight release. I'd go to Tesco's, queue up outside. But I went to the one the year before and they ID'd me and I wasn't allowed to get it. And I didn't get pocket money. I had to like work in the school canteen to get my own money and sell cans of Coke at school to get money and all the rest of it. Anyway, one year this game, Modern Warfare 2, come out, 2009. And I said to my mum, Mum, please, I want to buy this game. And she was like, cool, go and buy it then. I went, well, I can't because it's an 18 and I don't have any money. She was like, cool, we'll go and earn some money. And I'm like, fucking, I was like 12, 13 years old. I'm like, I can't legally work. And I was like, I've been selling cans of Coke, but it's not enough money. It's like 50 quid for this game. And my mum said, okay, let me give you a bit of advice. If you really want something in life, you'll find a way. And I was like, hey, what do you mean? She was like, you'll find a way. So in the end, I said to her, I was like, right, what can I do in the house that you can pay me to do? She was like, you can clean the patio. I was like, right, how much will you give me for that? How much do you want? I was like, here's a fiver. Cool. Clean the patio. Right, I'll do the bathroom upstairs. I'll do this. I'll do that. Give me a tenner. All right, sound. Went to school, like sold a bunch of cans of Coke. I was like haggling with all my friends and the rest of it. And meanwhile, I've got like 40, 45 quid. I had 5 quid left. My mum was like, if you really want something, you'll find a way. What else can I do in the house? What else can I do? Clean the car. All right, sound. I'll go and clean the car. I fucking worked my ass off, done anything I
I
could,
love it.
sold cans of Coke, helped my mum with all these things and all the rest of it. And in the end, she gave me little bits of like £5 here, £10 there until I had the money. And she was like, do you know what? I'll take you to the shop and I'll stand outside and I'll queue with you and I'll buy you that game. And it taught me such a valuable lesson. And it's like trickled down into the world of recruitment and into business as well. If you really, really want something bad enough, you'll do everything in your fucking power to actually achieve it. And if you don't do everything in your power and you don't achieve it, don't be pissed off.
Couldn't agree more. Um, I love what your mum did there. That's a great story. It just creates a sense of personal value, doesn't it?
Yep.
Um, yeah, and the reality is, you've got a few years on you, and the world that we live in today, there are things so much more accessible to the younger generation than there ever was in my generation. Um, but there is no substitute for going above and beyond if you want something. And if you
100%.
do, you need to recognize that work-life balance versus work-life integration
Mm,
um, is, in my opinion, really where you want to be focusing. But I
100%.
appreciate not everyone shares that view, and that's also cool. I
Yeah.
mean, we live in a world where we're all entitled to our opinions, but that is my opinion. I think it creates too many negative connotations and actually detracts from the need to
Yeah.
work hard to get on in life.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit more appropriate work-life balance. And my wife works in the civil service where the minute her laptop turns off, she's not at work. So for her, there is no work integration. Every one of her colleagues is like split off around the country. It's fully remote role. It's very work personal. Do you know what I mean? With recruitment, I mean, we both worked in healthcare recruitment, right? Fuck me, there's no switching off. I was taking calls at bloody 3 o'clock in the morning to refill shifts when nurses fell out and called in sick or whatever. So yeah, I believe in what you say, and I think the older you get, the more mature you get, doesn't matter what age you are, but you will understand when your body is crying for rest. I'm still learning this, by the way. I understand the whole concept of slow down to speed up, and then I go a million miles an hour with the podcast and stuff, and then just ruin myself, or go and work out 7 days a week and then just completely cripple my body. But you learn from these little things, right? But I wanted to pivot back to something I mentioned earlier as well, something that I'm really, really passionate about, and something that you and I have spoken about a few times. You mentioned about the power of your words and body language and how those things can be interpreted in various different ways. Now, we could tackle this from any different angle. You could tackle it from a leader, dealing with staff. You can tackle this from a recruiter or a solo business owner speaking to candidates and clients and how their words and their body language impacts people. But I'll give you the floor, Brad. Talk me through that topic.
Yeah. So look, people don't always, it's cliche, but people don't always remember what you said, but they always remember how you made them feel. Yeah. As leaders in recruitment, it's really important that we want to take our people on a journey, understanding our people. People got choice; they can go and work anywhere.
Hmm.
Yeah. I did another podcast a couple of months back. I said, if you're in a privileged position, someone's going to work for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's your duty to be able to focus on their personal and professional development. That's your responsibility.
Hmm.
And it's about recognizing that the power of your words is real.
Hmm.
Power of your emotional response, your body language is real. It can make people feel amazing, but it can also put them in a really negative state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How many times have we walked into a room and somebody has drained the energy? You flip that, how many times you walked into a room and somebody just lights it up?
Mm-hmm.
The difference is huge.
Hmm.
So we have to recognize that we live in a world now where certainly as leaders, we're in a goldfish bowl.
Hmm.
Yeah. Everyone's always looking. You can build a business with kindness and compassion and still make money. You can treat people well. Doesn't mean you always get it right.
Hmm.
Yeah. But it's the intent behind it. And it's recognizing the power of your words. And I think for me, it is such a crucial part of life,
Mm-hmm.
in particular with leadership. Almost everyone, bar none, has got an element of shit in their life. Yeah, it's just the world we live in.
Yep.
Your colleagues, your candidates, your clients,
Mm-hmm.
having a little bit of compassion, having a little bit of understanding, recognizing that I see so many passive aggressive people. It's such a vile characteristic.
Mm-hmm.
It's unnecessary. Just talk, communicate. We're entitled to be pissed off from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Don't project that on to those that work for you.
Mm.
It's completely disempowering, and people will judge you for it. Yeah. If you want to go in and deal with something, just take a step back before you speak if you are feeling frustrated.
Mm.
Because if you impact somebody that works for you with negative words, you're cutting your own nose to spite your face.
Mm.
Because how productive is their day plan going to be? How motivated are they going to be to go above and beyond? Yeah, it just doesn't work. So that self-awareness around how we communicate is vital.
Mm-hmm.
And your body language is as loud as your words. That's something that's really important for people to understand. Yeah. If you look pissed off, if you are coming across as grumpy, if you are not engaged, if you are not present when you're talking with someone, yeah, which is a pet peeve of mine.
Mm.
Yeah. If you are communicating with someone, for that moment in time, nothing should be more important than the person you're talking to.
It's just like common decency that I feel like some people, especially a lot of leaders that have almost like a superiority complex, like fuck it, I'm gonna call him up. My old boss used to do this and it fucking wound me up so many times where he'd have his phone facing upwards and we'd be having a serious conversation or having like a fucking monthly business review. And then he'd be going, so tell me about this. And then you'd be speaking
Yeah,
and he's looking away. And then sometimes I would stop speaking and then he would go, yeah, cool. All right, next question. I'm like, so you're just not even fucking listening to me. What is the fucking point? And it used to drive me insane.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I see it far too often. The reality is there is nothing really that important that can justify that behaviour.
Mm,
There is the occasional urgent thing that happens.
mm,
Guess what? If you're in a meeting with somebody and there's something urgent, somehow somebody will come in and interrupt the meeting.
yeah.
You don't need to be attached
Mm,
to your phone all the time. Don't get me wrong, it's I've been guilty of it before in the past. We live, we're attached to the damn things.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, but be present with people. Be aware that your facial expressions, your overall body language can really put somebody at real ease
Mm,
or distress. And if you're one of these leaders where people are stepping on eggshells because is he or she in a good mood today,
mm,
you're never going to get total respect
mm,
because people are always trying to second guess your mood.
mm. And
And
how do you like if you're working because you obviously you do a lot of non-executive director work. If you're working with a leader, you go into their office and you notice that, and maybe you've heard recruiters say like, "Oh, if Charles is angry, then everyone's on eggshells, or if he's in a good mood, everyone's great." You're working with a leader, like how do you help them change that?
so for me, one of the things that I really enjoy with the advisory stuff is being able to positively impact people. For
Mm,
me, it's taking leaders, their leadership team on a journey so they can be the best versions of themselves to create the
mm,
best versions of their business. Um, Feedback's really important.
mm,
Um, but delivering feedback in a compassionate way
mm,
is really where you want to be. Look, we're all human. Sometimes we can say something with the right intent, but the wrong delivery.
mm-hmm,
If that's the case, own that. That's
mm,
okay. We can all say the wrong things. Um, but in the main, my view is we might talk about it if we got time. It's what one of the reasons why I sent Mint 66 up. Feedback is really important for growth,
mm,
and brave leaders will embrace it
mm,
because it creates an opportunity for learning and development. And just because you own a business, just because you are a senior leader, it doesn't mean your development stops. If anything, you want to double down on it to impact people that work for you at a higher level.
mm,
You can help them develop to get to your level because
mm,
that's how you build great companies.
mm,
Um, so for me, understanding the power of your words, having the self-awareness of those words, and understanding the power of your body language
mm,
is really, really important.
mm.
Really important.
And like you said, feedback is brave. It's a really it's a difficult thing if you're running a business or if you're a leader of a department in a recruitment business. It's scary, man. When I first got into L&D, I'd done anonymous Google surveys to the business, and I used to send it out, and I'd get my L&D consultant and the other directors to like push the recruiters to do the feedback, and I was like, look, it's fully anonymous, so like you can slate me all you want. I don't care. I just want to make sure that the training and the coaching we're providing is the best that we can provide you because your success it means my success. And I remember going home at night after sending the first survey, just shitting myself because I didn't, I hadn't really done L&D before. I didn't really know whether the training was actually impacting people or whatever. And then when the feedback came back, the feedback was largely really positive, mainly because body language wise, how I speak to people, how I make people were bought into me. And I remember when you and I first met, you were saying, I've got loads of passion. I think that rubs off on people. But the feedback on like the actual training itself was sometimes too complicated, sometimes too wordy, sometimes too long. And I remember reading it and going, oh, fucking hell, man, like, because you almost, it's like a subconscious thing where your ego is attached to it and your ego is attached to your work. And I had to separate that for a moment and go, okay, there's positives here and there's quote negatives, but I don't really look at them as negatives. I look at them as ways to improve, lessons to learn. So then I just redesigned the training, took out half the bloody words to make sure it's like not people just constantly focusing on a PowerPoint, made it a lot easier to interpret and understand, sent out the survey again the next month. Feedback was fucking way better. And I was like, oh man. So then after that, I wasn't so afraid of sending out these things because I just had to separate my ego. But I tried to get the directors to do it more often because I was hearing things around the office like, oh, so and so, I have to be on eggshells, or I don't feel like he's very present when he speaks. You guys need to do this. I can't do that for you. You guys need to get the feedback and actually action it as well if you want to improve the business.
Couldn't agree more. Feedback is an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity for development. It's an opportunity to enrich your culture. It enables transparency and it enables change. Understanding how people feel, certainly in today's world. So that's why I set up the new business. Employees want a voice. They want to be heard. Yeah. Sometimes that's all they need. Just want to be heard.
Yeah.
You can't action it. You can't action everything. Yeah. But understand what you should or shouldn't action, or what you choose to action. But listen to people, because the average tenure of employees is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. As a company, you want to keep your people for as long as you possibly can, and you want to avoid those regretted leavers. Yeah, the more you understand about yourself and how people feel about you, the more you can develop as a leader, better you will be for it.
100%, mate. 100%. Well, look, we'll get on to what you're currently doing with your business in a second. But as you know, the last question I ask everyone on the show is, following today's episode, how can people get 1% better in recruitment?
Good question, because there's so many answers to that. But I'm going to stick to the themes that we've spoken about. Yeah, and for me, it's building block of your day, the foundation, which comes down to effective planning. Recognizing that a plan is not a to-do list. It's just a to-do list. You need to associate some time for it. You need to be structured. You need to be disciplined. In order to be consistent and an overachiever, try to control your day as much as you can. And it starts the day plan. If your plans are as effective as they can be, and you get a chance to stay in control of your day more often than not, sets you up in a way that's far more conducive to success.
Love it. You're the first person to talk about planning in this much depth, and I think it's, like I said at the start, I love having people on that are really, really good at those aspects that are possibly like my weaker aspects. And again, I say this pretty much every episode, but from a selfish perspective, I always come away every episode learning loads. So it's great in that respect. But Brad, honestly, it's been a real pleasure. Really, really enjoyed having you on. I've learned an absolute shed ton. But before we do finish, tell us all about Mint 66, what it does, what it's all about.
So it's an HR tech platform centered around employee engagement, employee feedback. Without going into sales pitch mode, the world of work is changing. We've got a multi-generational workforce, all have different needs. Yeah. As I mentioned earlier on, the average tenure of employees is getting shorter. Businesses need to understand what's important to their staff. Many of the platforms out there, because it's a proven market, really only monitor satisfaction. Satisfaction in isolation doesn't really tell you a lot. So we monitor two things: importance and satisfaction. And when you attach importance to satisfaction, it creates really meaningful data. So when you look at why somebody leaves a job, it could be salary, it could be comm schemes, it could be benefits, it could be culture, it could be leadership. If you put an umbrella around that, it's because whatever is important to them is not being met. So if we understand what is important to our employees and what they're satisfied with and what they're not, we can then have meaningful change to make the workplace better for employees and employers. So we've only recently launched. The website's mint66.com. We're super excited. We're industry agnostic. We're going out to the UK and the US markets simultaneously. Got a couple of great co-founders that I'm working with. Exciting times, a lot of hard work ahead. Doing it in conjunction with the advisory stuff, and it really fulfilled my purpose around impacting people and to be able to impact the whole of the workplace. It's changing so rapidly. I mean, I'm the wrong side of 50 now, and it's changing at a pace that I've never seen. None of us have seen.
It's crazy.
Yeah, are we working in the office, or we at hybrid, or we remote? You know, there's just so many factors. Communicating with your teams has never been more important. So we launched, and we're underway. It's exciting times. I love the startup feel. I've done it on a few occasions, and it gets me flowing, gives me the energy. So I love it. And hopefully it will positively impact businesses that we work with.
Amazing. Absolutely awesome stuff. Well, everyone go and follow Brad on LinkedIn. It's Bradley Placks, Mint66. And the final thing I'll say is we need more people like you, Brad. We need more people
Very kind.
no, honestly, like I'm like, for me, one of my biggest drivers, and so the reason why I've set my business up is that I do want to change the perception of recruitment. And I had Bobby Banerjee on the podcast a few weeks back or last week, and his overwhelming why was that he wants to leave recruitment better than when he got in it. And it's very similar to me. And I think that having people on the show talk about building a business on kindness and compassion and talking about the things you were talking about, active listening, empathy. I think there's too many arseholes in recruitment. I think there's, for every 3 people, there's 2 kind people and 1 arsehole. But we just need more people like you as well. So
very kind. I really enjoyed talking, mate. Thank you very much. It was great. And we'll speak again soon, yeah?
Yeah, fantastic. Guys, if you made it this far, like, subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's out now. Got the monthly newsletter, so you get the roundup of every single episode. Follow it on LinkedIn as well. You'll get all the little clips on LinkedIn as well. And by the time this comes out, end of 2024, start of 2025, but in 2025, we're going to be having probably 10 to 12 in-person, face-to-face podcasts. So stay tuned, and thank you very much for watching or listening.